All right, hello and welcome back to the Gumtree of Liberty. I'm your host, LibertyDownUnder, and with me today I've got returning co-hosts CentristOzzy, Jack, and Gerrie. And we thought today we'd do an episode on the history of libertarianism in Australia and just in general as well. And I thought we'd open up by talking a bit about the political climate here first, and how that fits in with the rising interest, I guess, in Australia in the ideas of liberty. Okay, so do you want to start us off, Centrist?
You're on mute.
Oh, he's muted. Okay. I guess I'll start us off then.
Sorry, I knew that would
he's
happen
back.
the moment we press record and the kids come in to say something.
Do you want me to restart?
Sorry, yeah. So, sorry.
Do you want me to restart this?
It's
No,
fine.
don't worry about it. It's all right.
Okay, cool.
It's live. Cool. So, yeah. Where were we? The current climate. So, obviously, lots of big changes have been happening in Australia. We've had, COVID has probably given people more time and more attention to notice what's happening in the political spectrum. And what I think we're seeing is a lot of distrust in our main party system. I've seen a lot of Labor voters who aren't happy with Labor, and I've seen a lot of Liberal voters who aren't happy with Liberals. And what that's sort of opening up a slight door towards is this move towards libertarianism, which is kind of exciting because it means that we've got our federal election coming up. Is it next year? I think when they call it
should be March.
Yet, so
March, April next year.
yeah. So that's when he calls that. It's going to be. I think we're going to see for the first time in a while. I think we about 3 or 4 elections ago we had a small rise in minor party uptick. But it sort of died off. But this time, I think we're actually going to really see a big pickup in the small minor parties, and of those part of the libertarian-minded type parties who seem to be gaining a lot of support, at least online anyway. And I think with the right, we're going to see a lot more movement towards those sort of ideals where we're not totalitarian in terms of our current two-party system. So I know Gerrie's, you've been in the system for a long time, so you probably have a better idea of how it's sort of changed to reach this point. Do you want to sort of fill us in on the right and how they're losing their supporters towards these sort of liberty?
Sure.
From where I've come from anyway, from the left. So
yeah. Well, one word, apathy, sums up both right and left. It's something that is really endemic once political parties start to lose their grip. They're disassociated from the real world, from the people. Politics has become, in my view, this is all in my view, from having been in a party on campaigns, working, volunteering, there's an absolute disconnect that has not just in this country, but it's actually across the Western world. So it isn't unique to Australia. And that's playing out big time with the COVID situation. So I just believe the machines have got too big, the party machines. I believe that politicians don't interact with their constituents nearly enough. They are protected. They go into this, great big, they built the new Parliament House. I have strong views on even having built that new Parliament House when they did. Why couldn't they have just all stayed in the old one, in their cramped quarters, doing it tough like most people they represent who don't have those sort of luxuries. I believe there's a change started then too with whatever you want to call this, a new progressive modern world, a movement, whatever. It became too comfortable. They're too comfortable. They're too isolated from the people that they're supposed to be representing, working with. They spend their time together. They seem to feed off each other rather than feed off the very thing they're supposed to do is the feedback from the people. They've lost touch. Absolutely
Politicians.
lost touch. And I am continually shocked at how much they don't mind to actually lie. I know it's perhaps been part of politics for longer than any of us have been around, but they don't seem to mind to lie in front of the camera. I mean, it really don't.
Do you think, Gerrie, that's more technology catching up with them? That
I think they're
maybe
afraid
in the
of
past they did lie. Yeah.
They're afraid of technology because it's a 24/7 thing. That hasn't helped. So in the last decade, the 24/7 news cycle, it's not even a cycle. They're on their phones. In Parliament, they're on their phones, which I also have an issue with. I just don't know how. It's not a secret that social media is distracting for anybody, let alone politicians who are sitting in the chamber that we all pay for them to sit on those lovely seats and have that wonderful life that they will keep defending as we work hard. Now, some of them do work hard. They do. But they're privileged. They're privileged. It's showing itself so clearly now. And I believe in that last decade where everything has become too easy and they are totally disconnected. I've had MPs say to me when I have said to them, you're not hearing what's going on in the world, they absolutely will disagree with me and say, no, I'm in touch. You talk to the constituents, they're not in touch. Apathy.
Those who have to say it often aren't.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that, Jack?
Those who have to say it often aren't what they say.
Exactly, that's true. So, and the other thing with that, and we can back that up with over the last 10 years, perhaps 12 years, how was the last time we had a majority government? So we've gone from having about 15 marginal seats, I think it was around 2010, 2012, or soon after John Howard lost and Kevin Rudd came in 2007. There are now 50 marginal seats in Australia, federally. Now,
for context, for those who are listening, there's 150 seats all up, so that's 1/30 of seats being marginal.
That's right, 151 actually now. We've got 151.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of seats that have changed from being, like most of them were regarded fairly safe. So you could say, yes, that's a blue ribbon seat or a Labor seat. They're guaranteed to win. Now it's gone from 12, around 12, 15 I think it is, to 50. Now that says people are losing faith, hope, trust in the major political parties, and they're going elsewhere. And we've seen this run on a big rise with Pauline Hanson's One Nation there, and then independents. Interestingly, One Nation didn't do as well last federal election. We're seeing a rise in independents, and then it was less on the last election in 2019, where Morrison won unexpectedly for the Liberals.
It's because Bill Shorten was a dickhead.
Yeah, I think that's a massive thing, and that's where I'll come in. Yeah, well, that's where I'll come in from the left as well. Is that there was the reason why minorities lost out was because we did a vote to withhold someone, basically, rather than like it wasn't necessarily voting on issues; it was more voting on making sure the other person didn't get in. So. But you, with Gerrie, how do you see the Liberals, which is our Conservative Party? How do you see their change in mindset? Because I know they've had a lot of defectors in the recent years going to parties in order to because they don't agree that the Liberals are following through with what their principles are. So what sort of differences have you seen where their principles have changed, and that's why they're losing a lot of their supporter base now to the minorities?
Yeah, I think the disappointing aspect for me and my family was that the Liberals do not any longer live up to what they professed to be, and which is still on their website, about freedoms and liberties, particularly liberty of the individual. Now, that is so far opposite of what we are seeing now with the response to the COVID situation. So if liberty of the individual meant anything to the Liberal Party, surely they would take an approach where it would be not telling people, threatening them with coercion, or saying that these shops are going to be as mandatory as possible, going out of your way to meet with leaders overseas, talking about these Build Back Better regimes and we're going to vaccinate the world. What about if even just a quarter of the world chose not to? That's not liberty of the individual. That's state coercion. That is so far from a classic. Well, they like to say that they're based on classical liberal philosophy, Edmund Burke, those sort of things. John Stuart Mill, I used to hear John talk about quite a bit. They're not libertarian. Well, they're not liberal, classical liberal ideals at all. And small business. Look at how many businesses. Small businesses was the backbone of the Liberal Party, and yet small businesses are the only businesses out of business that have been squashed. Big business is still there. They never got closed down during the height of the pandemic across the country, and in Victoria still bad. So how can you claim to support small business and do this and not stand up for your country and help, the states, the people in Victoria, particularly followed by New South Wales, are under so much pressure? That is not a liberal, classical liberal philosophy. They do not stand for the liberty of the individual. So how can a party like that actually continue to promote that when it does the opposite in practice, in government?
Well, that's probably why we're seeing a bit of a mass exodus with supporters at the moment for that party. It's been interesting to watch. Like I said, we've had MPs defect. We're seeing a rise in public opinion changing against the Liberals, which I think is a good thing. But I'm hoping that what we're seeing the same as happening on the left, because the same sort of ideals that the left supposedly stood for, which is worker rights, the Labor is supposed to be about the working class and the people thing. They've now turned on the working class. The people, the recent protests in Melbourne are a perfect example of where the union, who's supposed to listen to their union members, decided to throw them all under the bus. So the left has done something very similar, and I think I hate using the term woke because it's the only thing I can say that people tend to know, understand a little bit. The left, or the establishment left, which is what I call them a lot, is segregating itself away from its traditional middle class and lower class worker base. We're seeing it more representative of a university class, and and what? Sorry, we'll get that audio again.
Let's check again.
All right. Sorry about that. It's throwing me off guard. So basically, same sort of principle where the left, like the Labor and even the Greens, where I used to vote, have moved towards an authoritarian type framework, which doesn't really follow, and it leaves behind a lot of the people that were supposed to be representing, which I think is a pivotal thing, which we're going to be seeing a lot of the left, especially left libertarians, moving away from the Labor Party as well, which is good. I think what we're seeing now going forward is a real chance for progress as well as without sounding like a progressive, but it'll allow us to progress this country a bit better with a bit more balance to how we're seeing things play out, if that makes sense. If that makes sort of sense, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, no, I understand what you mean. It is interesting, that word progress. I really have had an aversion to that word, actually probably since I started studying ancient history, because I truly learned, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years, that, they have left us things that we haven't even been able to replicate, like even with it. So what I'm saying is that they weren't stupid people. The buildings they built, the concepts they came up with, the water, the irrigation, the things that the Romans built, all of them, Mesopotamians. I think a better term is to make our nations better places, far more. And I challenge the whole word of civilization too. Civilized. What is civics? So I tend not to use the word progress, because we always think of it, make it, improve on it, as if having any sort of precedent is actually no good. We've got to get rid of precedent. But a lot of precedents, those things that work, they need to be able to stay if they've proven themselves to work. And then you improve the things that need to be improved as with each subsequent generation.
Yeah, so I think to use those two terms, so obviously you're not keen on the progressive term, and you know what, the same can be said for conservatism, because a lot of people think conservatism is just, it was so good the old way, we only do it the old way, there's no means to change, there's no means to think, which we know isn't necessarily true. And I think if we were to use those two terms, and this is sort of what I've been trying to push a lot with the balance between the two, is because you can't just run headstrong at a gate and expect not to have to learn from the past, and then to use your examples and to understand that necessarily running full steam ahead isn't going to be the proper way of things. You don't want to progress at full steam. You want to have it slowed down, and you want to think about it and methodically work these things out. And this goes with economics, it goes with environmental policies, it goes with everything that we know. If we look back in history and learn from, is that we need to have that balance between conservatism and progressivism, so that we don't make those same mistakes again. Because what always happens is it's always one side goes all the whole way, and then we're back at square one.
And we're very much at that. It's my way or no way. That's the point we've reached. No society can exist like that. It can't sustain itself. Well, that's just my opinion, my thoughts. It's unsustainable.
It is. You can't sustain, if you can't have two parallel directions that won't find middle ground. This polarization that we see at the moment is detrimental to people being able to, one, live in society, and two, be able to be civil with each other. Because, like you said, civilization doesn't last if you split it in half. Because if you can't be civil with each other, then you're not going to be able to solve problems. And if you can't solve problems, that's when everything goes to shit. So, and
apathy has played such a big role in that. I am of the view that if people paid more attention to let's say it, call it politics, but politics to so many people is like a dirty word. Don't talk to me about politics or religion, or the two, because it doesn't have any impact on my life. That statement is really the most scary statement ever that anyone could speak, because people blindly in Australia send off 151 people to represent them in the Australian Parliament. 151 for a population of 25 million odd, and so many people, too many people, are happy to send them off there Well, you go and represent my views, but a lot of them say, oh, I'm not really that interested in politics, but then when it goes pear-shaped or it doesn't work for them, they complain.
You love having
Call me old school or whatever it is, it doesn't matter anymore. These terms are obsolete in my view. Kids do need to be taught about civics. Even in the ancient world, in Greece and Rome, they did that. The kids went off, they were taught. What is so wrong with that? And I don't think kids are taught civics in primary school anymore, from what I've been told. That's detrimental to our democracy if we want to save our democracy. And it is teetering on the brink right now.
So year six, which is last year of primary school, they do a basics of Australian Federation history, and talking more about, what the Senate and House of Reps are and who Henry Parkes is, and so that sort of stuff. And then I think at high school you do look at a bit of it in legal studies or whatever, or if your school does legal studies, you do it then, like in grade 7 or 8. But that's all I think there is. So you got grade 6 and grade 7, and the grade 6 one looks more at history, and grade 7 looks more at the legal side of things. So there's no civics equivalent really to what you have in, say, America.
I never learned civics either.
What are your views on that, Jack, that you didn't learn civics either?
I don't think that school prepares us at all for everyday life, especially in a country as regimented as Australia is, where it's all, you must do this, you must do this, you must do this. It really is a disservice not teaching kids this stuff. And the last couple of years, I've become more and more partial to the idea of homeschooling, purely for the fact that you can control exactly the information that goes to your kids, then I guess adequately preparing them for whatever, instead of having this one-size-fits-all schooling program, which doesn't work for a lot of people. Not all kids learn by sitting down and reading a textbook.
No.
Like tech schools used to be everywhere, and now they're next to nowhere.
Yeah.
They've been replaced with TAFE. That's it. So I think that Australia has done it on purpose.
Yeah, we did. We had a push, I think it was back when Rudd was in, we had a push through high schools to go away from TAFE and tech schools. That's why tech schools became less and less, and TAFE, even some TAFEs got reduced, because there was a massive push. So basically, like, if you don't go to uni, you're not going to make anything of yourself. And I think that was really detrimental to this country. And we're now seeing a push back the other way. Ironically, it's the Liberals who are pushing more money into TAFE and those sort of schooling, which had typically been the other way around. So these sort of problems that you're talking about with the tech schools are almost, how do I say this? I'm trying to figure out the right words. That's almost like a cover, because what Gerrie's talking about is understanding with the civics. Like, yeah, I don't know. I think I've lost my train, guys. I was trying to bring that down. Then.
If I can jump in, right? Yeah, no, you're right. It's civics. When what is politics? All politics is to form societies, to form structures or foundation, put a foundation down, create, structures sounds a little bit confining, but let's use structures that will promote the most harmonious way that people can live together. And of course, there's billions in the world now, so it's far different than, 1,000 years ago.
Just leave each other alone.
That's right.
Solved.
In a way, they probably didn't do that in the ancient world either. But it's, and Aristotle even, sorry, I'm always going to bring back my ancient history studies, but Aristotle said it in his book, which was the definition considered the handbook of politics, called Politics, is that your aim is to form a society where people can get along as harmoniously as possible. Not that everybody had to, because it would never work completely, and we shouldn't all be the same. But civics, I mean, I imagine kids, even when they start school, should be exposed to that. Well, we live in a community, we live in a society, we live in a town or a city or whatever. It used to be a village. How do we, start putting those ideas to them about how it works so that everyone can have their own voice, but still enough that we can live together. Now, we are so far from that concept that it would have our heads spinning. They are indoctrinated, and I'm with you, Jack, with that. Our daughter and her husband just had their first baby. I would never have imagined her ever thinking that, but she's seen the world now. She knows what's happening. They can both see it. There are so many of them, of your generation, actually looking at homeschooling for exactly the reasons you said.
Good.
Yes.
The less, because then we can cut the fat around public schools, and then the private sector takes over, and then you can offer competitive schooling. It's not a bad idea.
But kids aren't taught to or encouraged to think.
Critical thinking has been phased out of education. So,
yes.
I wasn't taught the idea of critical thinking until I think year 10. And that was only because I left the school that I was at, which I left the school because they didn't offer physics and chemistry, which, figure a school that doesn't offer physics and chemistry, and you can imagine what kind of school it is. So, but yeah, so I don't remember learning anything about that until later on. So
I think I learned it a bit earlier than you did, but I also did private schooling as well. So it wasn't as controlled as the public sector is.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think I might just do a quick run through of how we stand election wise, and in terms of political layouts in Parliament after the last few elections, and then we started talking about the history of libertarianism ideas in general, and also in Australia, and how I think Australia is going to respond to it in the coming elections. So, just to give a bit of background here, so I have spoken before about how the election system works. How you got the lower house and the Senate, and whichever party controls the lower house ends up having the prime minister and controlling the executive. Really, because of how voting works, it's 151 electorates federally. Each has one MP. 151 MPs in the lower house, whereas the Senate is 76. There's 12 from each state and 2 from each territory, and we have preferential voting. So for minor parties, usually the way to go is the upper house. Lib Dems had one senator. Their only senator, David Leyonhjelm, was upper house. The Greens have one federal MP. I don't remember. I think it could be Victorian.
Adam.
He's the worst. He's the one for Melbourne. Yeah, he's just the worst.
But they have 9 senators, and so that's 9 senators and one MP is a very different climate in both houses, because you can tell that the upper house almost always the balance of power rests in minor parties and independents. I think the biggest we've ever had for that would be probably the 2016 Senate election, which was a double dissolution. So normally you have half Senate elections, so you'll have 6 senators from each state. That double dissolution means that you have all 12 up, because the Prime Minister asks the governor to disband both houses for the election because they couldn't get bills through. So 2016 you had 11 minor parties and independents. You had 11 minor parties. No independents, but you had 9 Greens as well. So you had 11 minor parties. So you had Family First as 1, Jackie Levy Network, which was 1, Lib Dems and Justice Party both had 1, One Nation had 4, and Nick Xenophon, which is now Central Alliance, had 3, plus you had 9 from the Greens. That's 20 of 76 was minor parties. That's probably the most we've ever had for minor parties. Right now, you've got 1 independent, I think, 9 Greens, and 5 minor parties. So we have had a bit of a swing away from that dominance because we've had the change, because we've had only the half Senate election 2019, but we haven't really had the government controlling both houses since 2004, where LNP, I think, had a bare majority in the Senate. I think, from memory, they had 39 of 76. You need 38. 38 gives you half. So 39 is a 1-seat majority. That's the best we ever had. So I think the way to go for libertarian parties is definitely go to the upper house. And I think that's what we've seen both at a state level and also at a federal level. So obviously Jack and Centrist, you guys can speak more about having Lib Dems run at the state level in the Senate, because up in Queensland, which is where Gerrie and I are, we don't have a state Senate. We just got the state lower house. So do you guys want to talk a bit about how state politics work with regard to having libertarian parties in state senates? I know that there's 2 Lib Dems in Victoria. I think we used to have 1 in WA.
Yeah, well, Jack, you go first, because I think you're right. I'm not sure if we've actually got 1 in WA at the moment. I've been having a hard time getting in contact with them to get a bit more information through the WA branch. So yeah, I'll let Jack go in on that, and then we'll just sort of see how it goes.
I mean, I'm not 100% sure how the government works, because it really seems like it's not working. It's kind of seems like Daniel Andrews has complete and utter control. And I mean, the Liberal Dems guys, they just, they're very vocal, but apart from their vocal opposition to the lockdowns and whatnot, they don't seem to have actually done much. Like, I mean, what can they do? It's sort of, it's not really
more opposition. Sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely they are. Like the Liberal Party in Victoria might as well not exist, as far as I'm aware. Like, it only gets votes because people vote that way federally. Like, nobody knows who the opposition was until the Weasel guy came back, the guy that lost, the one that lost spectacularly to Daniel Andrews.
Michael Guy.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's not relevant. He's who cares?
I think that the Lib Dems have got a better David Limbrick and Tim Quilty are probably considered more of an opposition than the Liberal Party.
Absolutely, and I would be ecstatic if that became an actuality. That would be amazing. But at this point, nobody really, like, everyone I speak to doesn't even know the Liberal Democrats exist. Like, it's just Labor, Liberal, and the Greens. Like,
I think in Melbourne that's changing. I think it's changing.
Oh, it bloody better be, because the tradies are all looking for a new party now.
Yep.
Now the unions have showed their true colours.
I think you'll find that a lot of the guys in that sort of left, like, who typically vote Labor camp, will be looking for someone who can represent them. But I think, again, I think we said at the start of this, is that this is something that the Lib Dems need to be very clever about, is that they need to make sure that they can represent both sides of politics going forward as a libertarian.
Yeah, they need to compromise a little bit before, edging in some other stuff.
I don't know if it's necessarily compromise. I think they've got to just show a bit better the balance between the two sides of politics, because like I say, most libertarianism is like economically conservative but socially left, if that makes sense. It sits sort of in that sort of range, because if you think about personal freedoms, there's a lot of left-wing policies, like the drug policies, that you could argue are a left wing, and therefore but a libertarian approach would would sit on that. So they've got this
What's your
opportunity.
mandatory seatbelts?
they've got an opportunity to bridge the gap, and in a country with the way things are splitting in half, I think that's going to be really important going forward. If they can bridge that gap, they'll get some really, really good support going forward.
I think so, and it all depends on the candidates, because historically libertarian candidates they're kind of shit.
Well, Limbrick's a mate. Like, for everything I've heard of Limbrick, all the stuff that I've seen, the stuff he's putting out, it's really, really, really good. And he seems to be doing a good job of trying to balance out where people who are typically on the left are and people who are typically on the right are.
The other thing, because the other thing that's interesting is because after we did that podcast on the political party policies, I looked a bit further into the shooter fishers farmers, and they're quite libertarian. Like a lot of their policies do lean that way more than they lean conservative. And I think if we want to dig into that rural sort of national party dominance, I think shooter fishers is the way to go.
Also, they're a bit more eco-friendly as well. They're a bit more pro-environment than Lib Dems are, so they can definitely try and appeal to left libertarians a bit more than Lib Dems, because they had the more of an environmental focus.
Yeah, so it could be very interesting, because that could be a way to eat into the Greens as well in the cities. I think they need to rebrand as SFFP, not shooter fishers farmers, because the Greenies like to ree at the mention of guns. And then you've got Greens people like David Shoebridge, who is just the biggest idiot. If you ever want to have a laugh, have a look at what he says about guns. It's hilarious.
That's where all the ideologies have broken apart. They don't hold water anymore, the ideologies. I agree.
It's because they don't have principles. That's why. They have no principles. They can be bought. That's the problem. And that's where libertarians should be able to come in, because hypothetically a proper libertarian would be principled, no?
Yes, I agree.
So,
because they're ultimately the foundation is based on liberty, especially the individual. And if you are going to proclaim something like that, that's it. It's principled.
Yeah.
Can't deviate from it.
Exactly. And I think and I've been thinking about this for a while, because I'm like, maybe I should run, but then I'm like, I don't want to deal with it, right? And then I'm like, if I did go, I'd go up there like, I'm not your friend. I'm here to make sure that you're all right. Stop idolizing me. I'm going to be an asshole, but this guy's an asshole, but he's telling you he's your friend. So, so there's the difference. So just go in like an asshole, but be clear about it. It's like, I'm not going to be an asshole to anyone else. I'm going to be an asshole to these idiots who aren't being kept in line.
Yeah, and that links back to what we were talking about earlier, what I mentioned, why I thought it was breaking down, was because it's too much of a cruise ride these days. It's
a political class.
It's a class, and that's it. You've hit the nail on the head. A class, which then creates all of this division. So the class that we send the people to that belong to that class, who are supposed to actually belong to us, totally gone. Doesn't exist.
Yeah, so I've gone and found the election figures. Lib Dems had a state senator as an MLC in WA in 2017, but they lost that seat in this year's election in WA. They went from 1.77% of the vote to 0.64.
Ooh.
Sorry, was that the state election?
Yeah, that's the last election. Yeah. 24,000 votes in 2017, down to 9,000 this year.
Oh my
but people got to remember that with COVID at the time, McGowan had massive support because he managed to keep COVID out. This was before all the outbreaks took. Yeah, nah, it's changing. It is slowly changing. The outbreak.
Is that because he's being a border Nazi?
No comment. See, I think it's politicians being yeah, so the support is waning for that too, because people voted for him thinking that he had the solutions. And also, not to mention, he didn't have a lot of competition. They threw a sacrificial pig up the Liberals.
Appalling.
Yeah. And the minor people were worried. Like I didn't vote Labor. I think I voted West Australian Party versus anyone else at the time.
Wow.
Purely, yeah.
What a name.
They start singing. But yeah, a lot of it was more just I wanted them all. I did the whole vote them all last type thing because I wasn't going to give. I'd already started to see the writing on the wall in regards to the hospitals with McGowan and a lot of the stuff that I voted for him in his first campaign. I voted for him to fix the hospitals. I voted for him to do a lot of the things. COVID threw up a lot of stuff that I didn't like what he was doing. But so that's why I didn't vote for him the second time. But essentially, he's had the time to fix the hospitals and have us ready for an outbreak in COVID, and he hasn't done it. And a lot of people are calling him out for that now, and a lot of people are realizing that. What is it? I've been asking the questions. What have you been doing for the last 4 years? We gave you this. You had the election. You were always going to win it, pretty much. So they got behind him. They supported him. But what have you done since? And there's not been a lot of. There's been a lot of bravado and a lot of West Australian rhetoric that he's been pushing out. Like he's
What
played
have you done
on.
For me lately?
He's also played on the patriotism of Western Australians against the East Coast because we are.
That's hilarious. That's so funny.
But the thing is, they're all empty promises, and it's all empty rhetoric, and people are starting to see through it because
empty promises from a politician.
Yeah,
but that's what people have to see first. That's what they're not seeing. The people, and perhaps they are starting to see through that. They put too much faith and trust in politicians, that government, that it's just way too. It's unjustified, and perhaps it is starting to break from what you're saying, centrist. I hope so, because he's almost running a secessionist line.
Well, I mean, the Libertarian hemp party.
Yeah, well, he's
probably helped there.
I've spoken about this with other people, and I've said I joked about him building a wall because he sounds like he could build a wall right now. But the other thing is, rather than running a how do we get through the COVID outbreak without having to lock down, he's running a how do we separate ourselves from the rest of Australia, because that's what he's doing. And it played to West Australians. It played to West Australians at the start because a lot of us we have in the past been ripped off by the East Coast, and the new New South Wales Premier has been one of those vocals about it. So he's played that West Australian patriotism angle, but he hasn't done anything whilst doing it. That's what the problem is, and that's where it's falling apart. So people are now questioning, why is all these elective surgeries being cancelled? Why are our hospitals having issues now when you've had 12 months of bliss of not having to worry about outbreaks? Why aren't the hospitals ready for this system? And that's the main one that's pushing it back. And then the mandates are coming in, and I'm hoping what we're going to see is that the mining sector just got announced that they have to be fully vaxxed by the government saying that they have to be fully vaxxed by the 1st of January. One mining company, I think, has said that from the 1st of December, you've had to have at least one shot. So we'll see how the sector handles that. Doesn't mean It might not be a big pushback. It might be, but a lot of the guys who are working through that sector through the whole pandemic will probably sit there and say, look, this is not fair. You can't take our job. We've done this. We've helped keep your economy going in WA, and now you're going to try and force us out of a job. That's not really fair. So,
do you know how many deaths WA has had?
Yeah, I think we had 2, wasn't it?
It's 9.
7.
9.
Oh,
Sorry,
9.
9.
Nine.
No,
Well,
Queensland,
9.
Queensland's
9.
WA's 9.
Better blow up the borders to separate us from the East Coast. 9 deaths. Come on.
And
I think
some of
there's
them
been
were actually from.
20
Sorry, go.
Yeah, 20,000 deaths from other causes than COVID, 9 from COVID.
Yeah.
And as you were going to say, some of those deaths from COVID had comorbidities, so they died. They died.
And
with
we
COVID.
also, it also happened at the very start of the pandemic when we didn't know a lot. I think we had people come in off the cruise ship. One of the cruise ships, we know there was a guy an elderly man that passed away from our area where we live. And then I believe his wife passed not long after as well.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that was back when we didn't know anything about
Right at the start.
anything. Yeah. So we've done he's done well to keep COVID out. He's had benefit of being able to have an isolated city, an isolated state, and we've easily been able to basically keep our borders under control, which is fine. At the start of the start of COVID, I think nearly every single WA person was behind him in this, because we've also got remote Aboriginal communities, which we didn't want to see. At the time, we thought COVID was killing people, like 1 in 2 people. At the very start, everyone thought this is what was happening. So the problem is now is that he's had the opportunity to have everything fixed, and he's not doing it, and now he's starting to lose a bit of support. So I wouldn't be surprised if next state election there's this massive split up between the votes again, and we start seeing maybe a rise in the local in the smaller parties, but that's another 3 years away now. So
the thing is that you've got 3 years for WA's election, and Queensland has 3 more years because our election is every 4 years. That's just a new thing. So 2020, we had election last year, 2020. So both states will have the next election 2024. So those premiers can afford to be more tyrannical because they're not going to lose in the next election because it's a fair bit away, which is why they're refusing to open up internationally when Scott Morrison wants to, because they know that they can get away with more because they've just been re-elected. In fact, they both had swings towards them. Labor picked up 4 more seats in Queensland in the last election, so they definitely had a swing towards them. I think similar with W had a swing towards them as well. It wasn't as severe. But
I don't think WA was a landslide.
No, see, I've heard multiple different things. I had a look. I couldn't find anything clear data on it, but I probably just wasn't looking in the right spots. But there was it was supposedly a landslide, but I think it was just in terms of against the Liberals, because the Liberals did so poorly. So the Liberals were really, really shocking in Western Australia.
Right.
Well, yeah, there were 2. You've now got 2 state senators from the legalized cannabis party, which are more libertarian at least. Well, because they ran in WA because they ran in Queensland and they didn't get any MPs, but they did get a decent amount of the vote. So then they ran in WA, and they have two state senators from the legalized cannabis party, which is at least they're more libertarian-like. I can't remember if they're left or right.
You know what? That people only voted them for the weed.
Yes, but still, they've got to have. They'll still vote on non-weed related policies. They'll still vote on other policies, but I don't remember which way they'll vote because I don't remember if they're left or right.
Yeah, that's the problem with one issue parties. Is you don't know what you're getting. Yeah.
Okay, I found your figures. Massive swing. Liberals lost 11 seats.
Yeah, it was a huge loss to the Liberals.
They had 13.
Yep.
Nationals had 4, lost 2.
Yeah, how do we go for pickups in the smaller parties?
I can check that now.
I didn't even bother looking at some of the stuff because once I found that McGowan, they said it was a full-on landslide, and I've heard mixed reports about it, but the truth is he was always going to win. He couldn't lose. So
you had swings towards all the minor parties. They're only small swings, except Australian Christians, One Nation, Shooters, Fishers, Farmers, WA Exit lost votes to because they lost.
WA Exit.
Yeah, they won. That's
They
the
lost-
secession party. Yeah,
they lost votes to Labor.
The secession party.
Lib Dems had a swing towards them for MPs, but they didn't get any. They didn't get any MPs elected. You had a 14.14% swing to Labor in the lower house.
Yeah.
And the upper house.
How's that going for you?
Yeah.
But see, that's what happens when you're governing in a climate of fear. It absolutely decimates anything else. Fear, the big tool. But it's lasting too long. I mean, how long? We're over 20 months? Coming up to 20 months of this.
Well, Melbourne's been in lockdown for near 260 days now.
You've broken the record for.
We are officially, we're officially the world's longest lockdown city at 247 days. I think that was a week ago.
Yeah, but like even in WA, for example, you can't get any change through because literally the Nationals have more seats than Liberal Party, which is really odd. Like that's how many people support Labor for their policies.
But again, a lot of
the
that
Liberals have less votes than Labor. Again, in Queensland, you've got the swing away from LNP, who in Queensland are one party, not two different parties. In Victoria, I reckon you're going to see a swing towards Dan Andrew still, or towards Dan Andrew next year in the state election.
I wouldn't be surprised either.
Yeah, you'll see a swing towards him in the state election next year. I don't know about federally, but definitely you're going to see three. There's a reason why McGowan, Palaszczuk, and Andrews are known as the three popular Labor leaders.
Yeah. Well,
which doesn't make sense.
No, well, it does. If you're in WA, it made sense at the time. I knew a heap of people were going. There was like I said, he played the Patriot, the West Australian Patriot line, because there's always been a disconnect between the West and the East, and he played to our comrade, like the West Australian group, and from that he basically because. Every time New South Wales, someone would say, like, there would be an outbreak on the East Coast and there'd be huge lockdowns, he would be like, oh, look how good we are in Western Australia. Like he played to our egos, basically, on the West Coast.
Which is really ironic, when you talk about, mention he played to that patriotic Western Australian spirit, because as a nation, whenever anybody tries to claim some sort of Australian national patriotic spirit or whatever, they get shot down in flames. It's the irony of that.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like in politics, it's okay to have state of origin, but in the state leagues, but it's not so much in the federal league.
Yeah, and really, that's where it really, on a serious and very sad note, is that they're not governing for the well-being of the country, really, are they? It's all about ego, popularity, populist statements.
Well,
it's about identity. It's all about identity, and
that's why Daniel Andrews is not backing down, is because it's all ego. It's literally, he doesn't want to admit he was wrong because it means we were right.
That's politics 101.
We are seeing more and more people flock to the Labor premiers to support them. I found the WA Senate figures. 20% swing towards Labor in WA Senate. 19.93. They gained 8 senators. Liberals lost 2. Greens lost 3. Nationals lost 1. One Nation lost all 3. Shooters, Fishers, Farmers lost their 1 senator, and Liberal Democrats lost their 1. But Daylight Saving gained 1, and Legalised Cannabis gained 2. So you've got a couple of minor parties, but it's almost entirely Labor. You've got 22 Labor senators right now, which is a massive majority in the state Senate. And again, you've got the same in Victoria. It's a bit better because you have, I think Labor doesn't have the Senate majority. I think they're 3 votes away. I think they're 3 seats away from it, but they've got a Greens, an Independent, and someone else that votes with them. Reason often will vote with them. I can't stand Fiona Patten from Reason Party. I hate more than I hate her more than I hate Dan Andrews, because at least Dan Andrews has stated his rhetoric and his policies are the same. She claims to have libertarian ideals, and then goes and supports lockdowns when in her voting. So I despise her. But WA has somehow managed to secure enough seats in both houses to secure both houses for Labor, which is something that we rarely see. So as we were saying before, federally you rarely see a majority in both houses. But it's not the case right now. You've got a majority in both houses in WA, which I think is quite alarming.
It's a reflection of the sort of the integrity of people who go in, the character of the people who go in, but actually it's a reflection more of those who don't. The good, what's that saying, good people don't go into politics, which is such a shame. It really is the tragedy, more than a shame, it's actually a tragedy, because there are so many good people that should go in, but never would, given how it affects most of them. I won't say all of them, but I'd say too many of them. Changes them. They forget what they're there for, the whole reason of democracy.
Well, part of it's the system. I've always said that when Peter Garrett went in, and he got caught up in all that crap and had to get out. Like if someone like him gets stuck in it, then the system's pretty dodgy in first place.
Exactly, the system. So it's the system that needs changing, because the system's not working; it's failing us.
It's the same for David Leyonhjelm. He left politics because of the same reason. He didn't want to become a career politician. It was meant to be one term, but because in 2016 we had a double dissolution, he had to go to election twice. He won both elections, 2013 and 2016, so kept his seat. But he stepped down before the 2019 election because he's like, I don't want to get into career politics. So he would have, if it wasn't for the 2016 election, he would have been a one-term senator, and that's all he did. 1 6-year term basically is what he did. Although it was 2 3 years.
He's just a suck on Twitter. What's that doing for us?
His Achilles heel is he's a very, very much pro-vax, and he'll often get upset at other libertarians for it. That's probably his Achilles heel. I know he's had to go at me and Jack for it.
No, he had to go at me because no. What happened? He was following me, and he got annoyed because I didn't instantly say the guy who got photographed allegedly punching the horse, because I didn't instantaneously go, no, he didn't. Right? I waited. I'm like, it appears that this guy punched a horse. I'm like, don't do this. And he got angry. And then like 30 seconds later, the video came out and I saw the video. Right? So he's got annoyed at me and followed me like a petulant child. Like, get over yourself.
So did he block?
Oh, hilarious. No.
So I think one of the Aussies he's blocked. I heard someone say that they.
That's hilarious.
I don't know.
They could be wrong. This is allegedly someone he's blocked someone. Cover all bases.
That's funny. No, he hasn't blocked me.
Oh dear, we are in a parlous state, so to speak.
It'll be interesting coming up at the next election to see what happens there, because of what we're at right now. Like, on one hand, you can argue there's going to be a swing towards minor parties because people don't like Scott Morrison and Albanese. But on the other hand, you could say, well, look at WA, look at Queensland, where there's a swing towards Labor, and that was it, really. So you could make a case either way. Either we'll have a massive swing towards Labor, or we'll see a few minor parties get seats. It's not going to go towards Liberal. It'll either be Labor or minor parties that will get the vote.
I think what a big thing I think we should probably talk about as well, which will fly into what I'm about to say, is that we often think that what happens at a state level party-wise is something that follows through federally as well, which we've got to be careful of as voters. But with that in mind, if this new Premier of New South Wales comes out and goes bang, 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 scrap the passports, scrap the hang on 2 seconds, guys.
Mandate.
Sorry. Yeah, if he comes out and scraps all those policies that we all don't like, and then set Sydney free, you'll find a lot of people will flood back that left, which it's silly because ScoMo has still been pretty adamant down the same path, but you'll find a lot of Sydney-siders and a lot of Liberals will go, hey, look, we've got a Liberal who's doing what we want them to do. Let's go back and support him. Which,
that'd be coastal Liberals.
Yeah.
Coastal Liberals are fine, but Western Sydney Liberals are not happy with Gladys. It depends. It's a city. It really is a tale of two cities. On the East Coast, they've had a lot less restrictions, so the Liberals there tend to like Gladys. There's actually a petition to bring back Gladys, and a lot of the media were like people were mourning. People were mourning. People were leaving flowers at her office. In Western Sydney, in Western Sydney, people don't like her as much because they suffered really harsh lockdowns, and they didn't like the hypocrisy over the eastern suburbs.
The poor suburbs got screwed.
Yeah, as they always do.
It's not going to. From the looks of it, he announced the roadmap this morning, and it's all the unvaccinated are still locked out of everything. Only freedom back for them. This is the whole issue: medical apartheid.
So is it officially a caste system now? Can we officially call it a caste system?
You could almost do it, but he's not going to do it. Now, isn't that the whole idea? The whole idea is to stop the segregation.
Yeah,
he's not doing it.
That's good. Honestly, I'd rather see him not do it. For the pure reason is then it's going to backfire on the Liberals, and the Liberals are going to suffer big time. So, to be honest, if we want the change to happen, I don't think it's going to come from the major parties. They're too ingrained into doing the same thing over and over and over again. So if he doesn't, because my concern would be that he would flip all Gladys's stuff to win the votes back. And then, but if he doesn't do that, then there's more of a chance then that we're going to see a different representation come through, which will be better for people in Sydney, hopefully, and also then it'll show that you can have the other options available. Because a lot of with the voting around the West Australian and the Queensland one, people probably didn't vote like they would normally do because COVID and because of the unknown and what we've been told is happening. So
yeah, well, we will see.
It's going to be interesting.
Yes. Will be very interesting.
You got
anything else?
I think we covered everything, really. We have hit the 1 hour mark.
Yeah.
Yep.
If we ignore all the sound issues that we've had. Anything anyone wants to plug, besides from Jack plugging his podcast like he always does?
Yes. Follow me, do my podcast.
The only thing I want to plug is that people start to embrace and value freedom. That's what this is about. We don't have
That'd
freedom.
be nice. But it's freedom, Gerrie. It's freedom.
Freedom, yeah. Freedom and liberty. Freedom and liberty. I mean, if we don't have that, you don't have a society in any way, shape or form. It doesn't exist.
No. I don't know. I did break the state. Go listen.
Yes, I will have to start listening.
Yeah.
Episode 15.
I will retweet that from the ALN Twitter account. Go follow that account. It's down below in the ticker tape. OzLib Network. Go follow that one. A couple of us run that account.
Follow me
Gerrie,
as well.
do you have anything from the podcast that you're doing, Gerrie? Any more news from that one?
Sorry, which one was that?
You were going on. The one that you were going
on. No. I haven't heard back from myself. I was trying to organise a time. Then when it went down yesterday. I didn't get back, so I'll check that tonight. I haven't heard back from them. Just trying to wait to see if we can tee up a convenient time, because I don't know whether they run theirs at a particular time. So just wait to hear back from that. But like I said to the guys, that it's no need to worry, because there's still so much happening in Australia. In fact, as each day goes on, there's probably even more to talk about.
There's always, I've said to Americans before, I could do a daily, we could do a daily podcast and we'd still miss stuff about COVID.
Yeah, well, that's the thing with Dominic Perrottet taking over in New South Wales, and it appears that he's not changing the roadmap. Well, that's a lot in itself to talk about. So anyway, I'll let you know as soon as we've organised a time.
So whenever that comes out, I'll plug it from the Twitter account as well.
Yeah.
If that's everything, then I think we'll sign off.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
No worries.